A word: be gentle with the 40-year-old plastic. Welcome back to E30 Journey. I'm actually going to do a separate video because I don't know if you're watching the journey of my car, but while doing some things, I managed to break this little tab off. And what's funny is I was frustrated enough apparently that I just left the cluster in there and went back in my car, in my house. So I found a product that will help. All right, for some context, I was going through and replacing all of the bulbs in the cluster. So while installing the cluster back, I broke it. And these little tabs, I thought about, GB Weld or something like that. And it was very clear that that wasn't going to be possible, which is why I kind of threw my hands up and went to the miracle of YouTube for answers. And, I could probably like JB Weld some kind of little metal bar in there. I don't know. It needs to be really flush. And I thought that would look like crap, probably not work, and further frustrate me. So the miracle of the internet gave me this little kit from Race German, which replaces the tabs. So they make this in-house. It looks like it's 3D printed. But the video you see, I have to be honest, I wasn't loving what was likely coming in the mail because the video was their 3D printed template. Maybe these are 3D printed, we'll see here in a second. But I can already tell in the package, these are much more nicely finished than what's in the video. So kudos to them for that. One thing they mentioned in the video, kind of in text and not so much in the instructions even, I don't think, is that these are marked right and left. So that's nice. They are 3D printed. You can kind of see the thing here. But on the outside, even though it's kind of not that matte factory finish, I don't think that really matters too much because even this, you're not going to see sitting in the cluster. It's kind of not in your field of views. What the instructions require you to do is obviously I'm going to go ahead and replace them both, the unbroken tab too, but take both of these off flush to the rest of the cluster. So I'm going to get in there with some painter's tape and, protect the cluster just because that's me and all the stuff around it too. But the genius of these things is these register with these factory slots here. I mean, they're not really intended to be slots, but that's exactly what they've done to locate this properly. So you really can't mess up the location part unless you flip the right and left. So I'm going to make sure I do that, or don't do that, I guess, mix them up, and install it. And I'm going to be really careful here, though. I'm going to put a link in the description for their video and this kit. This is not sponsored, by the way. They have no idea who I am other than I ordered one from them. But I thought it would be a nice thing for the E30 community to see. So let's get taping. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing down around the side because I'm going to take this all the way flush. I want to make sure the pad I'm using isn't interacting with the tape. So the instructions suggest a piece of rough sandpaper on a board. I think that would take forever. In the video, he uses a die grinder and a cutting blade. I'm going to try some of that. I don't know if I have a cutting blade for my little guy. So I'm going to try the sanding discs. It's one of the reasons I'm sort of doubling up. In the video, he states pretty clearly that you're not going to really be able to see the scratches that will mark the edge of the cluster, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Speaking of things I'm going to really struggle with to do, is I got to break this off. That really hurts my feelings, but it's got to be done. I'm trying to figure out how I can do it relatively gracefully, but I don't suppose grace is a necessity here. I don't know. It feels really weird to break a cluster thing on purpose. 1, 2, 3. Ah! Oh God. I hated that just as much as I thought I would. It also occurred to me that I can give myself a little less work with the Dremel tool by getting as much of this stuff off as I can. I don't want to pry against the cluster, so I'm just going to kind of take what nature gives me, which was not as much there as I was able to get off here for the second round, but whatevs. And in my classic overdo it style, I'm just putting some tape here, and the tape is too wide, so I just kind of rip it in half and just overlap it in the middle, use the straight edges to get as flush to this as I can. I think that's 3 layers there and a couple layers there. I'll do the same couple layers on these sides just because I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy too. All right, first thing I'm going to try is my little M12 grinder with a coarse disc on it. I don't know if this is made for plastic or not. And it occurs to me, I want a little more tape. I think I'm using tape to shield my absolute and utter fear of this process. So, yeah, excuse me if you feel like I'm overdoing it, but I do not like the idea of bringing power tools to this party, or really just, like I said, doing this kind of thing in general, but that's just me being a sissy, not really any particular degree of difficulty here. It looks like a really straightforward job. I just don't like it. All right, into the abyss. That's not bad. Let's see how flush we can get it though. All right, that feels perfect. And I'm very jazzed about how much material this removes. It's not really gumming up the disc too bad either, so I'm making a mess on my bench. My bench is always a mess, so all right, let's keep going. So one thing I'm going to do is where I have this little piece overlapped, I'm just going to go ahead and let that, I'm going to come up and take that off manually instead of making the grinder go all the way down. And what's kind of cool is I actually feel the pad bottoming out on the tape. I know I'm not, I mean, I may be getting a little bit of the back edge of the cluster here, but I'm not damaging the cluster at all, which I like. So since we're here, let's just do a quick test fit. I'm actually not sure which they consider left and right from the back or from the front. What? Which? So these go far back enough. Boy, that's actually kind of a friction fit too, which is kind of cool. I don't need to round this over. It's kind of what worries when I was test fitting. So this is offset far enough back, or this ridge, I should say, that I don't have to worry about whether this is rounded off or not. I'm going to find that out a tiny bit more there, but anything else is good. Very jazzed. And just for the record, I didn't actually check. I'm only at the 10,000 RPM speed. I think that's probably judicious. I don't want to like remove too much. I don't want to remove too much material at a time. So for the record, 10,000 speed is where I'm using. Now I will mention there's some little bits flying off here and there, a lot of little dust, so it probably wouldn't be the worst idea to have a little mask on, and definitely some safety glasses would be a good idea. I don't have the mask, but I do have the glasses. All right. Okay, well that went, to be honest, eons better than I expected. I'm going to go in and just clear out these channels a little bit. I'm going to try not to do actually too perfect a job of that, because I did like how that was a sort of friction fit, but I don't need all this extra fluffy stuff in there. So All right, that's nice and flush. I'm very jazzed. Let's see how bad I did the, or if I did mark up the cluster edge. All right, so to be honest, I'm totally fine with the work I did for the tape, because I feel like it gave me all the license I needed to be as aggressive as I wanted to be, relatively speaking, with the power tool here. So, tiny bit, you're never going to see that, obviously, so super happy with that. I don't know what to tell you. Probably there's a similar disc for a Dremel if you have one. The cutting thing versus the sanding thing, this seems a lot more graceful to me than what he was doing to cut it. And, you know, if you slip, you're going to dig in, obviously, immediately. So I would recommend, if you've got a sanding disc, you know, if this type of sanding disc, the flat with the Dremel, is probably the most risk-free way to do it if you're using a power tool. So anyway, I'm super jazzed about that. Okay, so the friction fit is preserved, which I'm very excited about. They mentioned in the video you could put some super glue in there. I'm not going to do that because when I've replaced the dash, I think it might be useful to remove these. I don't know. I'm not sure why I think that, but for now, I'm going to leave it like it is and use the included screws. Now, a couple things. They talk about using the drill bit, and that is included with the kit, and going down about 3/8 inch as with a, you know, just put a piece of tape on the drill bit. They say you can remove the back, you know, all these sort of gold screws that hold the cluster to the frame if you're really worried about hitting things. And I'll admit, I am a little bit, but I'm just going to be really careful in marking and drilling and all that. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is I hate the idea that some of that plastic might drop in there. So on second thought, I think I am going to remove the cluster itself. So I'm just drilling through the trim, and I won't have to worry about any plastic falling into the body of the cluster. All right, after a brief tidy of all the plastic and a little bit of checking things out, I've solved the mystery. So if you sort of put the right tab from your perspective from the back, what you'll notice is the slots don't go in all the way forward. So this is not hard to figure out, but just, so it's right as you face the cluster and left as you face the cluster. So I'm going to get that in there nice and snug. And let's mark some holes. And what I like about this is I don't even have to really hold it down too much. Like, it's so positively in there that I am putting my fingers on it. But in my case, at least, I don't have to. All right. That's nicely in there. Okay, let's give it a slight bit of encouragement. There we go. So if you saw me do the cluster before when I was replacing all the bulbs, I was trying to see if there was any discoloration on the SI board or anything like that. And I think I might have an SI board issue anyway. Did not see any particular damage or corrosion or anything. But anyway, what I learned through that process relevant to today is these screws are all the same. So I was laying them out very carefully the first time, and I'm going to kind of do that here too. But there's enough of them that's a little bit finicky, and they are definitely all the same. So we're going to take them all out. So this one is slightly tricky for me. It doesn't love to come out. So I'm just going to give it and I mean just a little bit of guidance. I'm not prying up. I definitely don't want to strip any threads in here, but I'm just creating some upward motion so it comes out, and then take it out. And by the way, the one right there is really the only one that requires any kind of encouragement like that Taking them out, I'm being super gentle. Putting them in, I'm triply super gentle. I'm not like torquing them down or anything crazy like that. When I'm putting them back in, and I won't probably film that, I do tend to work from the middle out as I put them back in. Just, I don't know. Let's see, here we go. So let's drill some holes. All right, just because I'm that kind of paranoid and I really want this to be as close to perfect as I can get it, I'm going to see if I can stab a little mark right here in the middle. And then I'm actually going to go back, that's nicely in the middle. Probably what I should have done was do that while the tab was on there. So let's do that for this one. Yeah. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that's better than freehand. And the other thing I'm going to do is go in with a very small drill bit, the smallest one I've got, and drill basically a pilot hole. So yes, that's overdoing it, but my reasoning here is that I really only have one cluster and I'd really like to not to mess it up. By the way, I kind of suggest putting the 9 screws that go to that cluster off to the side a little bit. So now we drill. Yeah. Okay. Drama free enough so far. Why did I say that out loud? So these marks didn't register super well, so I'd kind of recommend going back and digging them in a little bit if you're going to do something like this, just to make them useful. Okay, so that one was the one that almost got me. I was a little bit off center from my mark, but was able to correct before I dug right in. So, pilot hole strategy verified. Now let's use their drill bit for the full-size hole. I'm going to choke up on that drill bit a fair bit so I don't have to worry about it. Okay. That makes that a very comfortable process here. Just not removing a lot of additional material. I don't think it even says what size these are, but that was nice. So I bought this brush from Harry Epstein's online. I'm sure there's something equivalent to it. It's actually made in USA. It was only a few bucks. I was ordering some other stuff, and I really like having it actually lives sort of right here under my bench, sitting on a nail so I can hang it. I'm not sure what those holes are for, or if that's what those holes are for, but that's how I use it. And it's my Tidy the Workbench brush. I got a bigger one for when I have a lot of material to move, but this one's nice and easy. So, product placement, not sponsored. All right, so now we're ready. Right to right, left to left. And we put in the screws that are very nicely lined up now. Now I think they say these are designed to kind of, and I can feel it kind of cut into the plastic. That's it. It didn't take a lot of turns, and when it stops, I stop. No extra tightening needed as far as I'm concerned. Between the friction fit, you can almost hear the plastic go stop. So that's what I'm doing. You can see where the screws have come through a tiny bit. Obviously you're not going to see that in the cluster, and it does look like it's well away from the board, so maybe it's not necessary to take all those screws out and take the back of the cluster out. I felt better while using power tools on this to not have the cluster anywhere near it. right. I'm going to use a piece of foam just so I'm not putting a lot of weight or pressure on my brand new tabs. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm the master of realized unlikelihoods, so I'm protecting it. So back in, working inside out on the screws and not dogging them down. In fact, I always leave them a little bit loose. Don't quite go all the way in as I'm going around, and then I go back and tighten them on. So, all right, all done. Now, I would tell you, I keep little fragments of cardboard around because I do things like mark what came from where. This is the oil pan on the family Volvo. I replaced some bolts, but having cardboard and little pieces of foam make for great ease when it comes to stuff like this. That was a perfect little wedge to not put pressure on these tabs. Let's go put the cluster in.